Hi everybody, we are Joanie and
Matt.
We are Joanie and Matt, and we are starting a new project, and we wanted to invite you to learn a little bit about it. So we're going to have our very good friend Rabbi Jessica Lenza come over and join us on our couch. Feel like David Letterman.
Hi.
Am I dating myself?
Yeah. I need some entrance music.
Dun-dun-dun.
Well, thank you so much for having me here today. I've been really interested, as you've been sharing with me these songs that you've written, to understand kind of your inspiration. Like, why are you focusing on Bible stories right now? What do you think is important about that right now?
Well, first of all, Joanie called me and was wondering if I was interested in getting back together and writing some music, and specifically about Bible stories. And I personally...
Well, I didn't want to write about Bible stories specifically. I wanted to write new Jewish music for adults.
Wasn't specifically the Bible?
No.
She's jogging my memory. Okay.
I wanted to do like some, because I write children's music mostly. I wanted to do like songs for adults, but in like the Jewish world, but not so Jewish specific.
Right.
And you were like,
okay, I'm remembering now. And then I said the Bible has some really interesting stories that have really good, just material. So why don't we look at some of the stories in the Tanakh, the Old Testament? Yeah.
What was the first story that you thought of?
Right away.
Yeah.
When in the email, when she emailed me, I thought of like a couple of stories right away, which are the ones that I always think of as the really interesting ones, which is like the stories around King David, a very complicated character, Joseph, Jonah, the Book of Ruth. So
like later Bible stories, really?
Yeah, I guess so. Yeah, not the classic Genesis stuff. I guess except for Joseph.
Right.
But yeah.
I was game for anything because my knowledge of the Bible is not quite as vast as you two, but I was, learning. We read a lot of script, but also I went on to Wikipedia just kind of for the quick Cliff Notes version of it all, because you really can find out a lot about these stories, and it sums it up really quickly. So from a songwriting perspective, we would kind of go back and forth from reading the text, and then me saying, wait, I don't quite understand that. I'm going to go over to the Wikipedia and look it up, and then I would be like, oh, okay, wait, that part? And then we would go back to the script and, Scripture.
Yeah.
That's right.
The script,
Actually, for me, the experience of writing the music is really interesting because I know the stories so well, and for Joanie to like some of them read it for the first time and to see her reaction to it, I took it for granted.
Right.
Like the first story I sent for her to read was about David and Absalom. It's one of the songs. We wrote a song about Absalom as one of David's sons. And Joanie had never heard the story before, and she had a lot of issues with it.
Yeah, it's a complicated story.
It's a complicated story.
As you mentioned, King David is a complicated character.
Well, we talked about this really early on, like my knowledge of King David in a children's music perspective is David, Melech Yisrael. Hi, it's so cheery and happy, and you think, oh, this guy must have been like this phenomenal guy. They have this song out, we
right.
sing this song with all the kids, and then I started reading, and I'm like flabbergasted. He is not quite the King David I thought he was, and that kind of brought us into the story about Tamar.
Yeah. And
one of his daughters, not the other Tamar, but one of his daughters, Tamar, who was actually raped by her half-brother.
Right.
And that of course I didn't know either, so I was just like, wait a second, King David did nothing? This is really messed up. We need to take this story and kind of like fix it, and we wanted to give Tamar a voice, so that's why we wrote Sterling, which we'll play a little bit later.
Yep.
But I think just I'm a feminist, and I think the Bible has a lot of issues.
Yeah.
And I'm sure a lot of people that read it, you go to temple, if you go to temple, you pray and you say these words over and over again, and you read these prayers, and you just don't really understand like the stories behind it. You're just so in the zone reading the same thing, and you just have it memorized. But in reality, there's a lot going on underneath the surface, and I felt like we needed to address that through modern songs.
Yeah.
And just one I just want to piggyback. And for me, because I'm so desensitized to it, and I know it for so many years, to me the Bible for decades now has been like literature. It's like another book with flawed characters,
right.
And so I kind of have a little bit of a different approach to the characters, I guess. Like Joanie and I actually have like different approaches to the characters when we write the songs, which is interesting. And then there's this like midway point, I think, where the idea comes out.
So do you think you're bringing in like your previous knowledge, like you have an expectation for these characters? Is that what you're talking about?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, I feel like I kind of know them. Like
Yeah.
I
don't.
When she was so. It's funny. Like I sent her the story about David and Absalom. Like I know it's a tough story. I had forgotten about the rape of Tamar, and Joanie got to that point in the story, and she called me and she was like, "Why are we writing this song?
Why are we glorifying these men?"
Right.
And I was like, I can't do it. I will not do it.
Right.
We need to write a different song. Like we can write that David and Absalom song, but it can't, like I don't want to have it be like a song.
And I wasn't looking to glorify in any sense of the idea, but I think what I was looking for is to write a song about somebody and all of their
right.
all of their intricacies and their flaws, and as opposed to like having what's the word I'm looking for? I don't know, not put them on a pedestal, just
right.
write about them. You know what I mean? So
I
not a critique in a sense.
Yeah, I think that's truly, like, if you really study Bible, there is a complexity there in the words that we tend to ignore as worshipers or believers, because it's hard to look at somebody who is as lauded as King David and his children and see what the Bible actually talks about as like these are very flawed individuals. They're human beings.
Right.
And I think that's intentional. I think the Bible did that intentionally because it mirrors our experiences as humans. Like, and that makes the text relevant and relatable. It's not a fairy tale. It's not meant to be.
Right.
And then, at points we can cherry pick kind of like aspects. Like, I think that people focus on King David being this mighty warrior or this great leader or that he was a poet or a musician.
Yep.
But, we don't tend to like look into the seedier side and like really dig that out. And I find that that's where it's most interesting.
And we found that as well, and that's kind of where these songs are rooted. And we also just wanted to make them really accessible, so like if people are listening that aren't Jewish or have zero knowledge of these stories, it's not necessarily like you need to know the stories to understand the songs. They really just, they could be love songs, they could be songs about relationships between father and son, they could be relationships between daughter and father, and I feel like the way that we wrote these songs, we were very specific in that we did not want them to be sounding like super Jewish or like super rooted in the Bible.
Yeah.
And then it's nice because it's almost like an Easter egg. So if you recognize like the plot, like the hints that you've left in the plot, I think it's like, so you're on the inside already. I think that's very cool.
Yeah, it's a good way of putting it.
So tell me a little bit about what inspired you to go through this like feminist lens. Like,
well, I used to work for Harvey Weinstein. Yeah. No, but there's been a lot of things that have been going on this year in the news. You were actually in India when all of that news broke, and it was like he came home, and I'm like, this is what happened while you were away, and it was crazy with the whole Me Too movement. And I know, just being on the private Miramax page, there's like all of these ex-coworkers of mine that have been just like nonstop chatting and like, did you know this? And what did you know? And it's been like bananas. And just, everyone that I know, every single woman that I know, every single woman has had some sort of experience that I think, is just not okay.
like harassment.
Harassment, abuse, rape, whatever it is. Like every woman has had a small story, big story, like everybody. And it's so I feel like, women are 50 or more % of this planet. Like this is accessible to them. These this perspective should be something that they can really understand and get behind. So yeah, I mean, we basically wanted to, I was saying at the beginning, we're like, we fixed it. Like, we wanted to take these stories and really give it that feminist twist, because the Bible doesn't have that twist going on for it.
Right.
So, yeah.
But I do think that that when you focus on female characters in the Bible, that there's like an opening. There's an opening for creativity there, right?
Yep.
Because the male stories are written in black, and like the female stories, you just have to kind of guess at them. You have to think about what they're thinking, and you have to what is their reaction, because that's not given to us in the text. So I think that gives a little bit of creative.
Right. What was she thinking?
freedom.
What exactly happened to her after that? Sometimes they just don't even mention anything. They just say, and then this happened, and that's it. And you're like, but there had to be more to the story. So that's where we come in.
Yeah. I always liked that mystery in the Bible. When certain characters are silent or they don't tell you what's going on, that's where like the secrets lie.
That's where, yeah, and
You know,
those were the questions that I had.
We wrote with Dina. Dina was more of like a passive, I wish my life was different character. That story, the story of Dina Sterling. And then we have Sisters, which is about Yael a little bit, and Judith. She has a little more chutzpah, right? But also, like, she doesn't really talk very much. I don't know the Judith story, but with Yael, she doesn't talk very much in the story either.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah, mostly women in the Bible talk very, very little. There's only one book in the Bible where you have two main female characters, and that's the Book of Ruth.
right.
And so it's like, I think there's a lot of possibility there, and that mystery I find to be pretty intriguing.
Yeah.
And it also feels relevant to what's happening right now. And I think that the Bible is this very authoritative text, and we get a lot of our societal norms, consciously or subconsciously, from that very authoritative world. And that world was closed off to women's voices for thousands of years. So it's lovely to like have this like breath of fresh air. And I think, as you said, like fix it.
Yeah,
fix that.
Right, we're trying. And also, I think, we want to play concerts around the country. We want to, bring these songs to you out there, but not just on YouTube, but like in person, because then we can really have these good, tough conversations and discuss. We can workshop these songs and talk about what this song is about and what does that mean to you and how does this affect you, and there's a lot to talk about, I think, and we're going to keep on writing them. And I think right now we have 6 or 7 songs.
Yeah.
We've been busy.
We have been busy.
Yeah.
And like musically, did you stick to a particular genre? Do you have like a particular sound that you were going for initially, or have you just kind of let it flow depending on the topic?
That's a great question. I think the music, our style just comes out naturally. I would say it's probably folk, country, Americana.
Yeah,
and that
folk Americana.
Venn diagram, of sorts.
Yeah, Matt does play the banjo, and about 10 years ago we released what we think is the very first Jewgrass album, which was for children. It was called Chala Chala, and so that was banjo and guitar, and it was very bluegrass. But that was a decade ago, and now we've kind of put the banjo down. Not to say it's not going to make an appearance at some point. It could. Who knows? But right now we're just kind of focusing on this kind of southern, kind of modern, rootsy.
My favorite music I've ever really heard is like harmonies and like one guitar. That's the music I've always really, to me, has always been the most powerful. So it's kind of nice to write in that style. I feel most comfortable in that style. And we also write differently. I write from the melody, and Joanie writes from concept or chords.
Or a title.
Yeah. She needs the character. It's funny. We'll be sitting and I'll have a melody. And she needs things to be fleshed out, and then she starts to I've picked up on how you do it by this point.
Yeah.
So different.
I was like, can we just be in different rooms for a while? But we actually stay in the same room, and we figure it out, because I've been trying to write like you, and it's been a challenge for me and very interesting to change my way, because as a songwriter you really get stuck in that thing that works. And so for me, it's like I sit down with the guitar and I have an idea of exactly what I want to write about, and like the music, the chords, and the words and the melody, everything all just like bleh, comes out at once, and that is definitely not what happens with you.
I really like, I'll be on the street and I've got that chorus in my head.
Like with the words and stuff?
Sometimes, yeah. With Sisters, that's what happened.
Right, that's true, yeah.
I was walking down the street and like, bam, and like I just had it. And then I put it into like my voice recorder, and I went home and I wrote it. It was that simple. With me, I have this kind of faux spirituality with songwriting, where I think that every song I've ever written has already been written.
Yeah.
All the melodies are inside of me somewhere.
He told me that, and I was like, not the case for me.
But when I songwrite with partners, it's not necessarily the case. Then I'm kind of called to the craft of like trying to write a story. That's a lot of time with Joanie. Joanie will have a melody and then we'll write a song.
Mm-hmm.
So not every song here has come from deep within inside of me. A couple of them, when I'm the one who generates the melody, so to speak.
Right. Sometimes you bring me a chorus and then we work around it.
Yes. Right.
And then sometimes we come up with a concept and then I like start it and then we come together to write the rest of the lyrics in between. It's been interesting though, because
she's the workhorse. She really like
who, me?
She's like, no, like I'll be tired. She's like, we have to finish this line. And we finish it.
Yeah.
And it's always worth it.
And then we eat chocolate.
Yeah, we eat a lot of chocolate. That's awesome.
Yeah. I mean, songwriting is not songwriting without chocolate.
I didn't know that was a crucial component. But
It is.
If you're making songs this
It's
way,
really
I guess
fun.
it's the magic.
It's your reward for finishing the song
That's
at the end of the night.
You're here.
Do you have an idea? I know you have like 7 songs right now.
Yeah, I think so.
Do you have an idea of like a song that you haven't written yet, or one that you're working on, like a story that you're working on?
I don't.
I just sent you a new idea.
I didn't read it.
Oh.
Sorry.
The story, the Parsha this week, is it Zalafachad? The two daughters?
Slavchad,
What's her name?
The Benot Slavchad.
Yeah, Benot Slavchad.
Yeah.
They're the interesting story to write.
Yeah.
What is that about? Should I get Wikipedia? Oh wait, I have a rabbi in the student. Okay.
It's about these 5 daughters, and their father was killed, and so they don't have any male relatives. And as the Israelites Moses is dividing up the land amongst the Israelites, it goes to the male in the family, but they don't have a man in their family. So they go to Moses and they say, we should still have our portion, even though we don't have a man. And Moses asks God, and Moses comes, and God says, yes, they're right. So it's one of the few times where we have female characters in the Bible with names, and it's not a story about them being victimized. It's about them feeling, empowered. They challenge kind of this ruling, and they win. So they become like sort of feminist icons.
Challenge accepted. I like this. This is good. All right. Well, that'll be our next. Stay tuned, everybody. Well, thank you so much, Jess, for coming over.
Thank you for asking me.
Of course.
That's great.
Yeah, and so please stay tuned. We're going to be releasing a bunch of new videos very soon. And we have a photo shoot coming up. And we're going to have some working on our logo. We're going to have stickers made eventually. So all of these things. And if you're interested in booking us, you can do so at joanieleads@gmail.com. Or
banjomatt@gmail.com.
Banjomatt.
That's right.
So yeah, we hope to see you soon. Bye.
All right, thank you.